All right, thank you. And I just want to express my gratitude for Tam having us here today. Lyft is really excited not only to be involved in today's discussion at this workshop, but an exciting partnership that's underway for later this year with the Smart Train. So I'm really excited to start exploring some of the ways that Lyft can be more integrated in the transportation network out here. So like it was said, I'm a member of our transportation policy team. I actually come from the public sector. My background is in transportation planning. I used to work at the City of Davis as well as the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. So it's a really unique opportunity to be part of Lyft's transportation policy team, where we get to take a more proactive look about our role in the transportation network, really engage with planners and DOTs on some of these critical planning and infrastructure issues, and look at some of the ways that we can actually help fill gaps and complement transportation networks. So I want to start with a question and just poll the room here and ask, how many of you have taken a Lyft ride before? Oh, that's great. And can you raise your hand if you've ever taken a Lyft line ride, which is our shared ride service? Okay, so that's less of you. And to just kind of get everyone up to speed in the room about what that is, Lyft Line is our shared ride service where, using algorithms and real-time information, we're actually able to match passengers who are headed in a similar destination with another individual, put them in the same car so they can share the ride together, and sort of in exchange for having a slightly longer trip due to picking up and dropping off another passenger, you're actually offered a lower fare for the Lyft line trip than the classic ride. So this is a service that I'm particularly excited about because of the affordability issues it presents, but also its ability to reduce the number of single occupancy vehicle trips. And I think everyone in this room is really focused on those environmental and greenhouse gas emission reductions. So it's a really great service that we offer, and you can actually see that in our markets where we offer Lyft Line, which is in over a dozen cities around the country, more than 40% of the rides that happen in that market are with the shared ride service, Lyft Line. So it points to a really exciting potential for more ride sharing to be taking place, and a real willingness on the consumer side to participate in that. Lyft was started in 2012, and so we've been around for a few years now. We are in over 250 cities. Actually, yesterday we just launched in 50 more, so we're very quickly approaching 300, growing very quickly in the United States. And last year we did over 160 million rides. So we're taking off, and we're really excited to continue sort of zooming ahead in 2017. And like I mentioned, Lyft has a really special transportation policy team that's focused on partnering directly with public sector to build a truly 21st century transportation network. And we think that there's a real opportunity for us, rather than sort of being in opposition to each other, but actually work together to fill gaps in transit and provide more connectivity, better customer experience, a more on-demand service for consumers, but also provide real benefits to the public sector in terms of cost savings, ways to stay modern for changing consumer behaviors, and really be able to embrace this mobile-based technology. So we started working with public transit agencies in 2015 through our Friends with Transit campaign. And since then, have worked with a variety of agencies. And I think that the real reason why the public sector is interested in working with Lyft and shared mobility partnerships generally is, again, around that opportunity to cut VMT and really embrace some of those sustainability metrics that are so important. So like I mentioned with our Lyft Line service, that's really about increasing vehicle occupancy through our Lyft Line service and sharing rides. But there's also an opportunity for electrification. Earlier this week, we actually rolled out in our Los Angeles market more of the Chevy Bolts, which is the extended range EV, onto the Lyft platform. We have a service called Express Drive, which helps people that want to become Lyft drivers that might not have a qualifying vehicle or own a vehicle, but would like to work for Lyft and have the opportunity to have a flexible income to actually rent a car. And as a way to help electrify VMT and really sort of put more EVs on the road to help meet some of those aggressive ZEV targets that the governor's put out. We think that TNCs can be a really great platform to do that. And then the third area is really around connecting to transit. Our business model is really laid out to provide shorter trips. It would be very expensive to commute from the South Bay into San Francisco every day using Lyft, but you could help fill that first and last mile gap and connect to Caltrain, which is something that we see many of our passengers do both in the Bay Area, but all over the country in our other markets. So it's really these areas that drive us to work with the public sector and really come up with partnerships. And we've identified a few key use cases around what are the real opportunities to work together. So I just touched on that first and last mile connectivity, but I think there's a couple of other really exciting ways that we're starting to work with agencies. We have a suburban solution to really starting to tackle some of the challenges that I'm sure Marin is especially familiar with, of being able to provide in a low-density suburban environment, frequent fixed route transit. It's something that is really difficult. It's expensive. From the customer perspective, the bus might run every 30, 40, 50 minutes, and if they miss it, that can really cause, frustration and be a real pain point. And for the agency, it's a real low fare box recovery and something that's expensive to provide. So we've actually started to work with some suburban communities. We've worked with Lavta in the Dublin area, as well as some Southern California cities, to look at how can we use Lyft as another tool for a transit agency to help ensure that coverage and offer mobility in a suburban environment where more traditional tools like the 40-foot bus just don't make sense. We're also working on paratransit and really focused on how can we help a demographic that historically hasn't been able to take advantage of on-demand transportation, be able to tap into that technology and service and have a more on-demand experience. We've worked with a couple of agencies on that and really focused on elder mobility and making the Lyft platform itself a more conducive service for that community to use. So this is just a snapshot of some of the agencies that we've worked with over the last couple of years, and we're really, again, looking forward to adding Tam's logo to this slide in the future. So to dive in a little bit more on this first and last mile problem, I kind of want to walk you through an example partnership of how Lyft is actually working with an agency in being that first and last mile solution. So last summer, we launched a partnership with the city of Centennial, which is a suburban town outside of Denver, and worked with Denver Regional Transit to really help grow transit ridership in Centennial. They have a really great light rail network out there. The greater Denver region faces a lot of congestion, and so there was a lot of interest from the city to help expand transit access, get people off of the roads and riding transit. So we worked with them to really understand the needs of their community and design a partnership that really met those needs. So we leveraged our Lyft Line service, and the city decided to fully subsidize Lyft line rides to or from their Dry Creek light rail station during commute hours. So this was really focused on that use case of meeting commuter needs and helping get them to and from downtown Denver in an alternative way to driving alone. And so we were able to use some of our geofencing technology, which is the ability for us to sort of map out in our app and create a zone where a subsidy can or can't be applied. So in this case, the city wanted to have either the origin or destination of the trip be at the light rail station for the subsidy to be kicked in, and then it was only to work during the work week, during those peak commute hours. So from Lyft's perspective, our technology is very flexible, and we're able to design a program that can meet those different parameters. But it wasn't just specific time of day parameters that the city was interested in exploring. They really wanted to build an inclusive and accessible service that everyone could take advantage of. And so Lyft was able to create what we call access mode, which is the ability for us to onboard a fleet of wheelchair-accessible vehicles and have those on the platform so passengers who may need to request a vehicle with a ramp can take advantage of that. So that was something that we were really proud of, as well as the utilization of our service called Concierge. And this is something that helps provide an alternative pathway to requesting a Lyft ride if you don't have a smartphone or necessarily know how to use one. This is some software that we built and make available to our public sector partners to use in their call centers. So someone could just call up their call center on a landline, not necessarily have to have a Lyft account, and can talk to an agent who can dispatch a ride on their behalf. And this is actually something we're already using here in Marin. We have a partnership with Whistle Stop. We recently did a partnership with them to help Marin elders, run errands, go to doctor's appointments, and see friends. So I think that especially with this audience, this is some software that will really resonate with you from an accessibility and inclusion perspective. I also wanted to give an example of our paratransit partnership. We think, again, this is a really great opportunity to help provide critical mobility to a demographic that could really benefit from that. It has tremendous, healthcare advantages, quality of life. This is something that Lyft has really started to chip away at, and we're really excited about. Not only working with senior centers and nonprofits working in that space, but actually working with transit agencies because the cost of providing this service are so expensive. Actually, in Boston, the MBTA has seen paratransit costs quadruple over the last couple of years. So being able to simultaneously lower the cost of providing this service while also improving the customer experience and moving from a model of having a user request a ride 24 hours in advance to a more on-demand experience is just tremendous. So last fall, we worked with the MBTA to launch this pilot program, and it leverages, ADA qualifying customers who meet the paratransit needs. They're able to sign up for this program, and the MBTA provides a subsidy for them on like a monthly basis to be able to take trips. And again, we've met those ADA requirements by working on putting wheelchair accessible vehicles onto our platform, as well as, again, utilizing this concierge service. And it's something that we've really enjoyed seeing the success of. It's really great to see some of the customer reviews come in and feedback about, being able to have a much more on-demand lifestyle and be able to get around much more easily. And the agency's been very pleased as well. And then for the last part of the talk, I just wanted to touch on some of the AV issues. Again, there was a really great panel this morning on this, but I did just want to highlight that Lyft is working on autonomous vehicles. We have a partnership with General Motors. They've invested $500 million in us to really build out what we hope will be that utopian vision of building a shared autonomous electric vehicle network. So we have been working on that. And we have come out publicly and said that within 5 years, a fully autonomous fleet of cars will provide the majority of Lyft rides across the country. So while there is a lot of questions around the actual timeline of the autonomous vehicle rollout, this is what our timeline looks like, and we're working very aggressively on meeting that. We also think that it's going to be really successful because owning a car right now is really burdensome and expensive, and there's a lot of different costs that go into the current way people get around. It's not just owning a car, it's the insurance, it's the gas, it's the parking ticket, it's the registration. There's a lot of pieces that come together, and being able to move to a subscription model where you can actually pay as you go, much like how people now subscribe on Netflix or some of these other subscription services. It's really enticing, and we think that that's the way of the future. So in this model, people don't own their own autonomous vehicles, but they're actually part of this broader network of shared vehicles. So like I said, we have a pretty tight timeline of how we're looking at the rollout of this. Of course, right now today, we have human drivers on the Lyft platform. But in the next 5 to 10 years, we actually think it's going to be this hybrid model where some trips will be provided by human drivers and others will be provided by autonomous vehicles. And I think there's a lot of different use cases that there will be certain restrictions on the types of vehicles that can be providing those trips. So when we first come out with autonomous vehicles, it'll be on some of those lower speed roads during daylight hours, good weather conditions, lower speeds, and eventually as restrictions roll back and the technology gets better, some of those more difficult use cases will begin to be provided by autonomous vehicles. And in 10 years out, we think that the majority of those trips will be by autonomous vehicles. And it's really about, this idea of taking back a lot of the space that has been allocated in cities for parking and being able to put it into much more productive uses. I think the panel this morning laid it out really well, just showing how much space we use in our cities to store these vehicles. And if we can kind of convert that space into something more productive, that's better for everyone's quality of life. And, I live in San Francisco, and I think that a really good promising example of what that might look like is if you look at Octavia Street in the Hayes Valley neighborhood in San Francisco, where they actually took down a freeway, and this is actually now what it looks like today. It's a really great park. There's pop-up shops and restaurants, lots of cute dogs. It's something really great and part of what makes San Francisco so great. So I think this is the kind of city that we want to be working on building, and autonomous vehicles play a really big part of getting there. So with that, I want to thank you, and I'm excited to discuss this in more detail later. Thank you.